In this episode, learn how to guide your sellers on what to fix and what not to fix in order to net them the most value for their property and actually become an agent that brings value and not another agent that brings you just a sign. Thank you, Peter, for joining. Again, here we are at our podcast, just trying to educate everyone really on what we do on a day to day in our listing appointments and how we're advising our sellers. So, how you doing today, Peter?
I'm doing great, Sharif. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can't complain.
Yeah.
So, I figured, a topic for today is definitely, we go on a lot of listing appointments. I know I average about one or two a day. How many do you do, Peter?
Yeah, I would say, it depends on the week. I mean, but I'll just in general, I would say also somewhere between 5 and 10 a week as well. But some days I have nothing.
Some
Yeah.
days nothing, some days it's stacked, right? So
Right.
on average, one to two a day. And, doing that, I know I've built out a system. I've built out things that I normally talk about. And one of the things that always comes up, either the phone call when I'm booking the actual appointment or within the appointment itself, is the seller always asking me, what can I do to net the most money, right? So as listing agents, I know we always advise, our sellers that we're protecting their net. That's really what it is. We're the net dollar specialists. So what are some things, Peter, that you encountered or things that you say to your sellers when you are put into that type of situation?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I usually like to sit down with them and figure out the reason why they're selling to begin with. What's more important to them about selling the house? Because some sellers don't have the money or equity to try to do some updates or upgrades to the house before selling it. And some people just want to get out of the house as soon as possible. So we try to just really match their goal and get them to where they want to be as soon as possible. And then based on that, we give them advice based on what their end goal is. Right. So I know we were talking earlier, and just like, some homeowners obviously take pride in their home, and they want to make sure that everything is shown perfectly, because they remember when they first looked at homes, and when they were looking at homes, they were some things, I guess, maybe bothered them, or it was maybe a pet peeve for them. And some other people don't like could foresee these things, and I tell them like, hey, what is it that you're really looking to do? Like, what did you have in mind? If they wanted my opinion and they have the money and equity and they don't have any problems doing anything, then we obviously take them to the steps necessary. Obviously, the first thing we talk about is decluttering. That's the most important thing that anybody can do without having to spend a lot of money or any money at all.
Mhm.
And then there's definitely the painting, and then we can go into bigger renovations from there based on how soon and how much equity they have and how much money they have to spend. What about you, Sharif? What do you usually do?
Same type process. I mean, the first thing, the interview process when you're trying to, feel out the situation, because there's a couple factors, not only like money, like you mentioned, Peter, but also time. Like, how much time do you have, right? Because some renovations could take months or even a year. You don't ever even know, depending on what you need to do. But I like to sit down with them and figure out, okay, what are your expectations of what you want to sell for? Because that kind of gives them, a place to start. And let's figure out, okay, well, if that's what you're looking for, let's see what your home is worth right now. And if we're at that point, great. If not, how are we going to get there? Basic things I like to recommend are always the flooring, looking at the floors, making sure that, if it's carpet, if there's any wrinkles, it's stretched out. Always providing a steam cleaner who can actually come in and probably, actually clean the carpets professionally, where was one of the things. Going back to neutral colors, if possible, with the paint, any type of fresh coat of paint in any area, especially ones that show, the usage or age of the property. You definitely want to get that all cleaned up. Other things is definitely sprucing up kitchens and bathrooms, right? Kitchens and bathrooms are what sell homes today. So just doing little things like changing out light fixtures. My most popular thing I like to actually recommend is those old school hi-hats, recessed lighting, just replacing those simply with LED lights makes a world of difference. I promise you that. And it's a very minimal cost. So kind of just going through cost, factors, only because, just like I also invest in flip properties. So I have a good understanding of what things are going to cost, how much cabinets are going to cost, how much countertops are going to cost or flooring. So able to give them a ballpark number and let them know, okay, within our range, if you do such and such, you'll be over the top of this area of the range, right? So that's really what I'm trying to do within it. And one of the biggest things that I also bring up is the approach of the home. I have a landscaper that I work very closely with, almost goes to every single listing that we have that the seller allows us, spruces up the landscaping, fresh mulch, power washing the entryway, power washing the actual doorway, if needed, painting the door or painting around the door. Because statistically, that's probably where most buyers are going to spend the most time waiting for their agent to open up a lockbox, or just as they approach the actual property, that's the most time they're actually spending in one area. So having that in tip top shape is also something I always highly recommend. With that being said, Peter, what do you think that brings back?
I mean, obviously, it brings credibility. It brings value. It shows that you know what you're talking about, and you're a professional in the field, versus somebody that's just, a yes man or a yes ma'am type of deal, and just going in there just to make them happy or tell them what they want to hear because they don't want to offend them. And I think also there is a big difference of how you say these things. So you don't want to go in there and just be like, oh, I hate these colors, or your kitchen looks like crap. You got to make sure that you approach it in a way where, hey, I just want to remind you that I'm on your side. I'm a partner with you on this to get your home sold, and I want to just give you an idea. If you were a buyer, or I want to walk you through the buyer's eyes right now, if I'm looking at this home through the buyer's lenses, what they would most likely see in today's market, because they could have bought this house 30 years ago, and the cabinets that they have right now were in style back then, and they don't realize what people look for. They don't realize people typically don't like carpets as much as, maybe hardwood floors, or vinyl floors, as an example. Things change, and paint colors change, and things go out of style. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and people should know that. But the way that you approach that conversation has a lot to do with either how they take it or perceive it. So, I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a seller where their previous agent who sold them the house came in and pretty much crapped all over the house and said, the paint colors that they did just a couple of years ago looks horrible. And I guess the wife took that a very, very offensively. And I think it has a lot to do with the way she approached the wife, because she did a lot of the choices herself. And for
Right.
that reason, they're not going back to that agent. So you have to come from a place where, hey, I just want to give you my opinion, what buyers are looking for. If this is something that you're looking to do and maximize your home value, I want to just give you an idea. Do I have your permission to just kind of give you what buyers are saying in today's market?
Yeah.
What do you say
Definitely.
about that? Yeah.
I mean, I've been through that too. I mean, even with one of the most recent listings that we have on the market, we just put on the market last week. They had a red wall in the kitchen and the rest was yellow, right? And I joked with him. I was like, I love it. He's like, you don't like my red wall? I was like, no, I love your red wall. I used to have a red dining room, but we want to sell your house. So I just want to bring it back to neutral colors, because it's almost like you have this, this nice light yellow going throughout the whole kitchen. It's brighter until you get to this side. And in addition to this, you probably want to paint the ceiling, right? It's showing signs of its age. There looked like there was a leak at one point coming from the roof or the skylight. I don't know. You said that you fixed it, but it's still showing that way. So these are things that you're going to do to highlight your property, and they appreciated it. And you want to come from a place where I'm just trying to protect your net dollar, right? I'm doing this because I'm trying to make you the most money possible because you deserve it. That's really what it comes down to. But if you present your property in the wrong light, you're not going to get the top net dollar that you're looking for. So you always come from that place of, value and understanding that you have them in mind. You're trying to protect their dollar. It's not about you, it's about them.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a reason why it's called neutral colors, right? Because it's neutral. You're not getting 50% out of, of the buyers that don't like red out of the market, or whatever the percentage is. Everybody's got a different taste or style of clothing, or whatever it is that they like to do. but it's neutral because it's typically going to be a fit for most people, and you can't really go wrong with neutral colors. It actually brightens up the room and makes the rooms look bigger. It makes it look cleaner. So there's so many benefits of doing that versus just getting some colors that we wouldn't say neutral, right? Like you said, red, blue, like darker colors.
Darker colors primarily,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, primarily that's what I see a lot of people like. It could definitely, and it's crazy because there's so many buyers out there. And I told this actually to a seller the other day. They just don't have the vision. They don't have the vision of how much like the house will look like if you paint it and how much even paint costs. And sometimes people just want to have a house that's just move in ready. They think maybe painting will cost them 30 grand, where it's like maybe 3 grand or 4 grand, depending on the size of the house. Just people have no clue. And why would have them do that guesswork and eliminate these options altogether? And that's why I usually tell sellers to. But again, it goes back to their motivation and how quickly, like you said, Sharif, and how they want to move.
Definitely, and just sizing it up and telling them, "Hey, look, you can spend probably like 25 or 30 grand to upgrade that, bathroom. But the fact of the matter is it going to give us back that return? It's really what your invest is going to take you to that point in our range, but you're only making 5 or 10 grand. So is it worth those like month or month and a half it's going to take, which might knock us out of the seller's market that we're in today? So timing is crucial, and you definitely want to provide a sense of urgency, of course, especially if we're in a market like we are in today. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So you got to, kind of size it up with them. And also, not only renovations, but also how they stage their property. We most recently, even last week, one of my agents and I, we walked into a property and they had a beautiful wall, right? A beautiful brick wall with a fireplace. And they had one of those areas where you store the wood, and it was great. But it was covered up with couches, and they were using it as a game room. And on the other wall was like the projector TV, right? I'm like, but you guys are covering up all like this. What it's a selling point. So you got to advise them about the staging or even what they could do, what the next buyer could do. In certain price points, it's popular to have a main floor bedroom with bath. There was a property that we currently have on the market. We're able to virtually stage that half bath as a full bath only because there was a closet on the other side for that bedroom that was adjacent. So to give that, options really intrigued the seller. And it was like, wow, we can do that. We can show them that it could possibly be that. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. We can give people the ideas, or even just staging with stuff that we have ourselves with furniture wise in rooms, or even doing it digitally online. So that's something else that we like to suggest, is so that people can get over that, Peter. Those buyers that can't really visualize things, we're trying to also attract them as well, right? Not just the ones that can visualize things, because people use different sides of their brain. That's fine. Now we want to capture the whole audience to get as many eyes on the property. So that's a lot of, do you guys do anything like that, Peter, as well?
No, of course. It's funny you say that. We had a situation also recently. It's a house that's actually, we just took pictures of over the weekend. But I originally had met that seller back in January, and I gave him a list of things to do. And they want to maximize the house. They're not in a rush. They're looking to retire and move to a different state. So, they were planning the move in the summertime, which is right around this time. I continued to follow up with him at least once every 2 weeks, and he appreciated that. Every time I call, he goes like, yeah, I know you would call today because I know this is what you promised us to do. And he really appreciated that. So uh, you know they were originally supposed to finish the renovations back in April. It took a little bit longer, and I'm like, look, I'm gonna come by the house and just kind of see where you're at with the process. He was like, we would love that. So the part of the process is also like, if you're gonna be giving advice, you want to touch and follow up with them and kind of give them almost a deadline, because otherwise when people don't have deadlines, they typically take longer than usual. And like you said, we got to express that urgency. So when I came in, I told him, okay, I'm coming by on Saturday. I just want to see how things are going. He texts me. He goes like, hey, I've been doing a lot of work. My wife just takes very long time, and it's very hard for her to balance work and getting everything done. When you walk into the house, please don't tell me how beautiful the house looks. I want you to he was like, I want my wife to finish whatever she has to finish, because there is a lot of stuff she hasn't gotten rid of. and I want her to get rid of it. So I'm like, I got you, don't worry. So I walked in, I'm like, oh, it's great that you did all this work. We just got to continue to declutter these boxes and all that paperwork because they work from home. Like, we can't just keep them in the room. Like, his wife was there. He was like, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to work on it. So I was like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do, because I know I've worked with clients just like yourself. When they tell me they work on it, it ends up taking months, more months from now. What we're going to do is I'm going to get the photographer scheduled for next week. And this way you have a whole week to be finishing all the work that's going to be done. It's like, oh my God, already a 1 week. I'm like, yes, because otherwise you're going to miss out on the summer market. And guess what? We only have 1 month left because people are planning to move in the summer. They want to move before the school starts, which it gives us really 6 to 8 weeks from now. We really need to be on the market now. And they appreciated that. And all of a sudden, everything got done. And we scheduled photos for the weekend.
And it's important. You gave them a deadline, and some people need that, right? They need to have something to work towards, something that they have to get something done by, right? And it's really just advising them through that process, and sometimes even providing the vendors like your VIP contractor list that can get things done quicker, can get things done more economically for them, and actually get it done. Because a lot of when I walk into a listing appointment, the sellers, they tell me that they have a hard time having people call them back or getting someone there to do the work. And it amazes me. I can't believe it. But just offering that and letting them know, hey, once you sign, now it opens up the door where I can start recommending, different vendors to you that we work with all the time. So I think that's essential too, for taking them through, because I think even when you do recommend these things, they get a little overwhelmed, because of that factor. Now they got to deal with other third parties to get the work done. But let them know that you can streamline that process and definitely build those relationships with people in the area where you can streamline that process. It's important. Your network is your net worth. So definitely build on your network of contractors. Don't you agree, Pete?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I tell all agents, look, we're like the hub, right? We're the center of everyone else, as between like all the vendors that any client need to communicate with. If it's attorneys, contractors, inspectors, any vendor or insurance, mortgage lenders, like, and we have to have these contacts because most likely people don't know, and like you said, they don't want to be bothered of like interviewing multiple vendors. Some people just want it streamlined, easy going, like, and some people want to be like, want to shop around, want to interview multiple people. But if you come in a place where like, hey, these are the people that I've worked with and I've recommended other clients, I've used them myself. If you would like to use them, here's a couple of recommendations on contractors or attorneys, whatever the case is. And they would appreciate that a lot, because moving is already painful as it is. Buying or selling houses,
So
yeah.
painful.
They don't want to have to do another task added to everything else that they have to do. And our job is to make it as easy as possible for them by providing these contacts. I think is key. And every agent should have a list of contacts that they recommend from any vendor. And like you said, we call it the VIP list. And it's one of the benefits why clients want to work with us. And we express that during a consultation, if it's either a buyer or a seller consultation, because we just tell them, like, we want to make every part of this transaction as easy as possible. And that's why we provide you with a VIP vendor list to choose from. These are people that we trust and we've worked with in the past, and most of our clients had great success with. Because on the opposite side, I'm sure you've heard horror stories about contractors where they ghost and never get the job done in time, and it's just it adds more stress to the buyer, the seller, and it just makes it more painful.
Definitely, definitely. Just streamlining the process. You're gonna try to get them the most amount for their home, in the shortest amount of time and the least amount of hassles possible. That's really what you're selling to them, and you really have to bond with that client and let them know you're on their side, right? And just let them know that if you were in the same position, you would be doing the same thing. This is what you would advise in that position. So really getting into that, and just telling them what things are more important than others. Some sellers get stuck on certain areas because they live in the property. They're looking at it because they look at it every day, and not from the outside, from the sales point of view, what people look at it on what they want when they're purchasing a property. So just trying to stick to that, is really what you want to do. And that's really how I structure my listing appointment.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes us very valuable too. A lot of people are afraid of like the AI era where, like they think they're gonna get replaced by AI or maybe the big platforms. And again, and I don't think that's gonna happen. And mainly because of these things, right? Like, how do you go to one person, talk to them face to face, and be like, hey, this is exactly what you need to do here without having to research and spend hours online? And it could be right, it could be wrong, it could be market specific, it could be, for a different style household together. And on top of that, having a professional recommend you people that they've worked with in the past versus just going online and finding people that you haven't even no recommendations of. And that's, very key and very important, and what makes a real estate agent or a professional very valuable because of the network that they've developed over time and the connections they've made over the years. It's not something that you can get anywhere else.
Yeah. And how are you going to protect their net dollar? Right?
Exactly.
What are you going to do prior to even putting the home on the market? On every listing, there's a task that kicks off. I just explained it to our team in our team meeting yesterday. It's the Oprah request. We do that for every single property that we put on the market to protect the seller so we understand what things might pop up later. Let's nip it in the butt now, right? Some of our sellers are actually opting to take our advice and do a CO inspection, get that out of the way, figure out what will come up so we don't have to worry about when we're going through the inspection, contingency. And other sellers are actually doing their own inspection, addressing major items if they pop up, or at least disclosing them so that the buyers understand that nothing's trying to be hidden here. Other sellers will do an appraisal, just to have that in their back pocket to understand what a bank would look at this at, right? So there's other ways that you can advise your sellers so that they can protect their net dollar. So that's what we're doing is, I'd rather have a seller go and, take care of their open permits and things of that nature rather than do an upgrade, right? So, because we know that's going to come up anyway. So we might as well handle that. And if they have limited funds or limited time, those might be better things to tackle at that point. So it's really looking at the whole picture, just always keeping their net dollar at mind. That's really what we're trying to do is net them the most amount of money and, just trying to be on their side along the way.
100%. I agree. I mean, and that's what they're hiring us for. And they need to trust that, right? And that trust will get built over time. And really, like what you say during the listing consultation or the buyer consultation, like how can you get them to trust you that and feel that you're gonna have the best interest at heart versus you just looking at them, just as another dollar sign. And that's what they really want to feel and hear. They want a partner. They want somebody to protect them, like you said, protect their net dollar and make sure that they do the best for them. Because unfortunately, there are people out there that don't do that, and they just go in there. They just tell them everything that they want to hear, just so they can get another listing. Or it's the same conversation when we talk about price, or commission. Like you tell them, hey, like unfortunately your house is not what you think it's worth. Like let's say they want a crazy number for their house. However, like there will be agents out there that will tell you exactly what you want to hear. Do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? Or do you want me to tell you, what is the range that we are seeing these homes going on the market for and selling for? And at the end of the day, look, we're working together. We're gonna get you the most amount of money for your home, but we don't want to just tell them anything that they want to hear just to get another listing. But at the end of the day, like they need to really trust that before they take our advice.
Agree, Peter. Well, it's a
Awesome.
great topic, protecting your net dollar and, advising sellers during a listing presentation or even after or prior, of how they can net the most for their property, what they should do and what they shouldn't do during that process. But thank you, Peter. Always a pleasure seeing you. And if you like content like this, please, don't forget to like and subscribe below. Other than that, thank you, Peter, for joining, and everyone have a great day.
Yeah. See you next week. Take
See
care.
you.